Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of PG Radio. On this episode of my podcast, I speak with what is turning out to be, I'd say, a very intellectually enriching experience with Abhinandan Sekhri. Abhinandan is the co-founder and the CEO of Newslaundry. I'm sure more people who will watch this conversation have heard of Abhinandan. But conversations with Abhinandan are super interesting because he's one of the few podcast guests I get that do not hold back on saying what they think. And this particular phenomena, why that is unique, why it should not be unique, is because in India, where we have a very honor driven society, where it is very important that people perceive me right, where it is deeply ingrained even in tradition that our roles, which were explicitly demarcated with dharma as a historical concept in Hinduism, that our roles be maintained, that our honor be maintained. It is very important that we behave in a certain way, that we hold on to appearances. And I think Abhinandan, as a function of probably just being a journalist or himself, he's broken through that boundary very, very well. He's very honest when it comes to talking to me, and or at least for that matter, being on camera with me. And not just that, but he's also very careful with how he's open. And so it makes for a very enriching conversation overall. And I have almost nothing to complain. In this particular episode, what I wanted to search, the question that I was, let's say, on a journey to answer with Abhinandan was how the face of journalism has changed, especially since there has been a reawakening of the political consciousness of India. And I think this reawakening happened something around 2014 when youngsters began to get more involved as hope bled its way into the closed box of Indian politics. And with Modi, everybody got extremely more involved. We started thinking, talking, debating, considering politics more. And with social media being infused at the rate that it did get infused, the conversation exploded in a dynamic fashion. Nobody knew where to trace that conversation. We are still reeling from the after effects of the new competitive pressure in the market space of news and media. And we are still trying to figure out what to do with fake news, right? And Abhinandan has been involved not just in journalism for almost as long as I've been alive, but also in a meta sort of a journalism, an investigation of journalism, a prediction of where journalism goes from here and where journalism is coming from. And he is almost the right person to ask, with the perfect mix of being honest enough to talk about it and educated enough and in the know enough to know about it. Abhinandan turns out to be one of the better people to address that question to. And part of the reason why I wanted to figure out why media has changed in the meanwhile is to understand how much of pre-2014 India can I believe? Because I am, much like a lot of my viewers, much like a lot of people who follow me, are really beginning to question the India of 2020. I think anybody who follows me understands that I have massive distaste for the way information structures have failed society. And some part of the effort in this conversation with Abhinandan was to figure out as to how do we begin rebuilding it by mapping how have we really deteriorated over this period of time. So we end up talking about Arnab Goswami, one of the more recent incidents of freedom of press. We try and touch upon Mr. Anand Ranganathan. As far as I remember, Abhinandan does not say a lot. We do talk about how the new age media like Scoopwhoop, media like Samdhish Bhatia are beginning to affect political discourses. And we speak about a bunch of other things that fall halfway in the middle. That's pretty much it. Make sure if you listen to this podcast, if you're on Spotify, if you're on iTunes, if you're on any podcasting platform, if you're on YouTube, press the subscribe button, press the bell icon. I've been working extremely hard trying to bring these conversations to you. Hopefully, I'll be connected with you longer and better like this going into the future. Thank you so much and have a good time watching the show. Thank you so much for doing this again, Abhinandan. I felt like the first time around we did this, I did not impress you enough, so I've come with an upgrade this time. I've come with I've come with better questions to ask, and I've practiced a lot as well. So, I want to kick off this conversation with something very interesting that's happened to me over the last week, right? And what has happened is I put out a podcast with Dhruv Rathee, somebody you have also spoken to for Newslaundry. And I mean, in the course of research, I went over everything Dhruv had to say with you and blah, 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 blah. And Dhruv and I ended up having a very nice conversation. Like anybody who's fair to Prakhar, anybody who truly understands Prakhar, which basically means my friends and family and whatever audience is loyal to me, understood the rhythm of that conversation. But a lot of people who were on my platform because I had interviewed some of the more right-wing people, were absolutely flabbergasted by the idea that I spoke to Dhruv, right? And there was all this noise in the YouTube comment section about IT cell members से क्यों बात कर रहे हो, and ये तो कांग्रेसी है, और ये तो आपने इसको check दे रखा है, and stuff like that. And it made me realize that this enterprise that I'm running, of which you have the slightest of idea, is going to be extremely far more confusing, let's just say, for people than I thought it would be, and far more challenging for me than I thought it would be. I am curious, what is your opinion on Dhruv and the kind of reaction people like Dhruv get on social media? Because I'm sure some of the overlap of the criticism that Dhruv gets, you get as well.
First of all, good talking to you again. I hope you're well there in New York by yourself with your family here. Must be hard.
I'm trying. I get company of people like you and Dhruv, and then it's fine. I'm like, fine. Ye to hota rahega. No, honestly, it's a far more interesting conversation than with my dad.
But I'm sure it can get much after a while. Yeah, lockdown in New York by yourself with your family here. It must be hard.
Yep. Now I'm beginning to get homesick.
Anyway, I'm hanging there. I'm sure it'll be fine in a bit. But so I saw your interview with Dhruv. See, I mean, what you said about, yes, Dhruv and me will be perceived as similar by many people because both of us are sympathetic to AAP. I am not only sympathetic to AAP, I have been associated with the movement that led to the party. I was a very integral part of the movement from, when it started. And there's also confusion, was I a, member of the party or not, because the way the party just, from the movement, it became the party with everybody in the room saying, we are all founding members. But then, of course, when you had to actually join, some joined, some didn't. I mean, right. It was it was a bit of this. I mean, there were 2 meetings. So anyway, that's a separate matter. I think it's inevitable that it will happen, especially in such polarized times. Dhruv doesn't try any monkey balancing act like many other does. He makes it clear where his preferences lie. That's not to say that he's never been critical of the party. I've seen him be critical as well sometimes. But you see, if you're doing a podcast and the kind of stuff that you're doing, you have to be clear what your audience is. I mean, I don't, categorize someone as right, wrong. It really depends on what is the purpose of your enterprise. If the purpose is clicks, number of clicks, traffic, then if you align yourself very firmly, your traffic will always be more. If people know Prakhar is basically here to trash the right and, be XYZ's cheerleader, then everyone from that kind of grouping would consume your content a lot. And if you completely commit yourself that I'm going to be like, just saying Modi or Hindu jaag gaya hai, CAA, Jindabad, Musalmano ko jagah dikhao type, then you'll also get a lot of traffic. So you have to be clear about what you want to do. Your motivation, your pursuit, and your strategy should be aligned. So, and right now you're young, you're starting out for a lark. So I say you don't even have to know. Fucking have a blast. Figure it out. And then when you're a little older, you can say, okay, this is what I want. I want to go for traffic. Then I commit myself to this. I'll get Vivek Agnihotri. I'll get, the Ranganathan. I will get the Jaggi. I'll get these people and I'll talk to them and you'll get a traffic. Those people will consume your content, but not from the other side look at your content at all, unless they're looking to trash it.
Right.
Or you can do the same thing that you can, get a me, you get a Dhruv Rathee, you get, someone like Siddharth Rajan, you get these people, then that entire traffic comes to you. But if you keep doing this, your traffic number, you will never be able to get the loyalty of one audience. So that is how this game works, really. So it really depends on what, but if you were to just take my advice, I don't think you should give a shit about what people say.
No. I do not. Like, if I am scared of my audience and whatever little audience I have at this point, then I'm not doing justice to the value system that I'm trying to ascribe to with this, right? My intent with this is not really, I'm not going to be an arbiter of what is right and wrong at all. My job is to pick the mind of some of the smarter, some of the brighter, some of the more intellectual, some of the more smart, more creative people, and see how they think. Like, I'm not trying to establish what is right and wrong. In fact, I had a lot to think about after the conversation you and I had when we were having lunch, and I asked you a few things about my show, whatever you'd heard of it. And I had a lot to think about whether I wanted to be more careful interviewing people who might have a slippery approach behind the camera and in front of the camera. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to try an experiment. I'm going to have a blast, like you said. But I think the problem that you were, or at least the issue that you were referring to, is what I called being put in a box, right? So I need to put my content out such that people can identify me without putting too much cognitive load on them. They're like, "Acha, theek hai. Prakhar, he talks right-wing stuff. He talks left-wing stuff." And then it becomes easier for them to come back to me to, hear the same kind of arguments, get those bargaining chips for a social interaction with their friend groups about politics and so on and such, right? And I'm not willing to do that. I'm going to try and strive and see if I can create something more harder than just simply submitting to the whims of what people want from me. But I think this problem is similar to what you were referring to, slightly referring to in the conversation you had with Dhruv. So I remember you spoke about how back when UPA was in power, people would call you Sangi. Now people call you Congressy. What is happening there? Yeah, this is such a weird phenomenon. What is happening there?
See, I think there were a few people. It wasn't generally not people who knew me well, but it's because during the Jan Lokpal movement, there was a perception that the Jan Lokpal movement was fueled by the RSS. And it is not altogether irrational for people to have that view, because there was a lot of support from people of that grouping. For example, Baba Ramdev was a huge supporter of the Jan Lokpal movement. He also came to our stage at Jantar Mantar. He had to leave. I don't know if I told you that story.
Tell me.
Because he was trying to take over the whole stage. And at that time, some of our volunteers objected because they just didn't like him, because the fundamental core group was very liberal in its approach to politics and life. And Baba Ramdev was the antithesis to that. So a lot of the volunteers said, either get him off stage or we'll pull him off. And that time there were live cameras rolling. So that way he's very smart. He saw the commotion just next to the stage and he got off on his own. And he never came back. At the same time, Sri Ravi Shankar's, foundation or whatever it's called, what's it called?
The Art of Living Foundation.
Art of Living. They were very, very helpful. Because when Anna used to come and say, ki hum Delhi aa rahe hain and sitting on a fast, we guys didn't have the resources to put up a tambu and gaddas and all. So Art of Living's volunteers really helped us. There was no doubt about it. At the same time, we got a lot of support from some trade unions and some hardcore left-aligned, trade unions. So it was a mishmash of people. But because there was also in this mishmash of people, some people who could be perceived as close to the Sangh or of that grouping. I personally don't think Sri Ravi Shankar and Mohan Bhagwat or the earlier Sarsanchalak Sudarshan were very close or anything. I mean, I'm speculating, they may be, but I don't think so from what I mean, that alignment has only happened now. But even that is not really they are the same, they are still separate entities. They are kings of their own kingdom. So that is why it happened. And because the UPA was in power, and that time, I had been involved in Right to Information Act and RTI movements. And our prime target at that time was UPA, because they were, in my view, a stumbling block to transparency laws, sunshine laws that could make, accountability more achievable for the common man through RTIs and other such laws. So they were the obvious target. Now, so what I'm trying to say is it's inevitable that will happen. But I mean, one has to see how far one goes in committing oneself. I mean, I've said often that I believe we live in a post-ideological world, and we have for a long time. I've given several examples on podcasts on Hafta and stuff, but whether it is how the West perceived globalization 20 years ago to how the West perceived globalization now. I'm talking about America. At that time, there was nothing wrong with globalization. Now there's nothing right with it. Because it is not a zero-sum game. economics is not a zero-sum game. There is always someone getting more than the other, and often there is someone losing a potential growth or a potential autonomy in economic policy, in earning capacity. So, so, so it's going to keep shifting depending on who's at the receiving end at what time.
Right.
So I believe today people make up their minds, most of them, at least most of the sensible ones, based on what is the issue. So is the issue water privatization? Then I will say, no, it should not be privatized. I take the liberal left approach. Is the view lignite mining? Well, yes, it should be privately done, but there has to be certain regulatory framework that people who suffer or the pollutants that are okay. Let's talk about car manufacturing. I think it should be only private. Government should not be running Ready Maruti or Hindustan Motors. Then it's complete. So you see, where would you categorize a guy who makes his mind up like this?
Right.
Similarly, on social issues, you could have a view on vegetarianism. It could be driven by your ethical view and not by a Brahminical or conservative Hindu view.
Right.
You could say, I don't think we could. So on economic policy, I think on economic issues, we are in a completely post-ideological world. Only complete relics or idiots will say that I am commie or I am capitalist. I mean, I still see people write in their bios on Twitter, capitalist at heart. I'm like, dude, okay, moron alert. Right. Someone says, communist, I am a communist, long live Marx. Right. Moron alert. Right. So you clearly have not followed economic policy of the world for the last 2 decades. But on social issues, I think there is a little more consistency. It's not just depending on where you're coming from. But today, ideology is not along social or economic lines. It is along Trump bole kood to kood, Modi bole baith to baith. So that has become the ideology. So a lot of people are caught off guard. They've throughout their lives propagated hardcore market economics. Then suddenly this government comes up with something that is the antithesis of that. They're like, Modi. Basically, that's where I am on the economics, on the left, right, liberal, conservative spectrum.
Right. The reason why I wanted to ask you that, I understand that it's inevitable. The first time I put out anything political, right, the first time ever, I got a call from a certain segment of my social circle telling me that I was extremely liberal in my views. And I got a call from a certain segment of my friend circle saying I was extremely conservative in my views. And I was like, okay, now I have a free pass to do whatever the hell I want because there is never going to be any consensus anyway. So, best of luck putting me in whatever label you want to put me in. But the reason why I brought this up is because I, in this conversation at least, want to trace how the media architecture has changed over since pre-2014 and post-2014. Because let's just say I was more aware of how media systems operated before. I was more comfortable with that. And this is a new territory. I think to some extent, Dhruv agrees it's a new territory. And that is why he's a little reticent to, be personal on camera as well. And so that's what I wanted to pick on. But before I go there, I want to ask you, it seems like the Jan Lokpal bill had such a public backing. Like it wasn't really divided on group lines or any of that. It was like everybody wants this to happen. But the transmutation it had politically, the political party that formed was, like you said, a specific subset of the entire group of people involved. It was almost as if everybody was invested in change, but not everybody wanted to be invested in power or the games of power. What exactly happened there? Why did only certain few people from that group of people ended up becoming politically active? Everybody else went back to their jobs and stuff.
Well, I can't speak for everybody. A lot of people came much later. Yogendra came much later, once the party was pretty much clearly there, as a contender. There were many other journalists who I know who flirted with the idea, but didn't take the plunge eventually. Ashutosh did much later again. See, I think there are different reasons for different people. I mean, some people like me who have been associated with Arvind and Manish since 2004. 2002, sorry, that's when we met. I've seen the movement, I've seen activism, I've seen it evolve in a party from like right in there. I don't think I have the patience or the temperament to be in active politics. I don't think my life's pursuits align with politics. I don't believe my life choices and just daily lifestyle choices. If I want to light up a cigarette somewhere, if I want to, I live my life in a very, I don't care what people think.
Right.
You can't be like that in politics.
Right.
I have a foul mouth.
Swear.
Podcasts are fairly later with expletives. I mean, I'm saying smaller and larger things.
Right.
I would like to take a Sunday off. I mean, for example, during the Jan Lokpal movement, I mean, for someone like me, it was a nightmare because Sunday, ab ye ho raha hai, come there, we have to go to the studio. Now we have to go to Bombay, to Maharashtra, to Anna's village. So, my regular life, there was no life, man. So that is one life choice that people don't join the party. And I know there were several who didn't for that reason. Some didn't join because purely financial, that, it was clear that this party, you're not going to make any money. And that I can tell you with authority that I mean, you may dislike them, hate them, but no one is doing jack. And I can tell you because of how we used to raise money just so that everybody, all the volunteers can get phones and stuff.
Right.
During the Jan Lokpal movement. With some others, I guess it's a question of not getting rewarded like they would like to get rewarded. I think a lot of people quit the party because they wanted rewards and they got those rewards in other parties, whether it was positions in companies as directors or whether it was other things that unless I prove, I cannot talk about. But and a lot of others, otherwise, I think everybody joined the party. Slowly, many of them realized this is not my gig. I had realized from the very beginning, politics is not my gig. A lot of people think politics is something that is like an office thing. I'll work Monday to Friday and Saturday, Sunday, I'll take off. Maybe you can do that in a BJP or a Congress that has been around so long, it's established, it's entrenched, it's like a big corporation working. But in a party that you're just trying to form, there's no such thing.
Right.
So it can get really exhausting. Yeah. So I think that kind of rocked a lot of people that, dude, this is not my gig.
Right. I think
I'm sorry. And many people, I guess, just didn't like the idea of having to listen to Arvind. Because, see, when we all started, we were all friends, right? We were all equals.
Right.
But once a party gets formed, he is first among equals, whether you like it or not. Even, I mean, when I meet him as a friend, I can argue with him and stuff. But if I were a part of a party, I can't do that.
Right.
You see?
Right.
And for a lot of people, it will be difficult to kind of make that transition. And you have to make that transition. I mean,
Right.
I've had friends who were friends, and as soon as, this is before Newslaundry started, the production house started and they started working for small screen. We had problems, One of them, a really good friend of mine, had to leave because from friends, suddenly I was her boss.
Right. And I resonate. But I think what is very interesting is that even if people have the kindest things at heart, even if the intent behind people's politics is pure and good, to actually get that, translated into action, translated into a proper political movement, has more logistical obstacles or otherwise preferential obstacles than not, right? I think it's like every time we try to think of politicians as all or politicians as a class of people who are in whatever way not nice, we have to understand that for every guy who is there, there's 20 who did not choose to be there because they understood that the game is dirty in some sense, right? But I'm also interested, and I think the series of questions that I might ask now might be slightly touching a line. So feel free to take off the coat of responsibility if you have to answer, or tell me that there is a polite way to answer that question. But I'm really curious. So I got engaged with the Arnab Goswami controversy recently, and I saw that Newslaundry was very, very active in talking about it. Right, like at least on social platforms, Newslaundry was making sure that it was commenting on it. And I want to understand exactly first what happened, what exactly happened with this thing, and then what does this mean for us? What does this mean for the common people?
I think we have 2 reporters working on it from Maharashtra. I think Prateek is working on it. So what does Newslaundry have to say? I can't tell you what Newslaundry has to say. That you can see on the platform, whichever reporter has written what. I can tell you what I personally have to say, and we discuss it on the Hafta. So I make it a point to say Newslaundry is not my voice.
Right.
It is voices of lots of people, many of whom I disagree with, which is why most pieces that have an opinion associated with it or a report go with a name. There is no nameless editorial. Unless it is just so-and-so arrested today at 12 p.m., that 5-line
Right.
short.
Right.
So what I understood was we had actually commented on this just before he was arrested and all those FIRs happened. Actually, I think we had recorded a hafta where he had gone on about the lynchings in Palghar and how, it was vile. I've seen him go far, but even I couldn't believe he'd go that far. And he pretty much said that, Sonia Gandhi was involved and now she will report to whatever Italy and say, haan, ye ho gaya, some such shit he came up with, which was insinuating that she was part of some plan. Of course, it is downright incorrect and libelous, but so that happened. Then I think a few days later, some FIRs got filed all over the country, and in true Congress style, people took photographs that we are filing FIRs for Madam Ji from Chhattisgarh. So I think they put on Twitter that like they're collecting a trophy.
Right.
So the psychophancy culture hasn't gone even after the debacle that they have. Then after that, Arnab was called for questioning for 12 hours. Apparently, he was questioned. And then he came back and of course, he made the most of it. He milked it and it became this big primetime Arnab versus Sonia thing. Oh, sorry, before that attack happened.
Right.
I had to throw ink on him and he did this long. And then they came, then I came, then they looked at me, I looked at them, then they did this on the window. It was like, I fucking get to the point, tell a story, man. It was and murderous attack. They threw ink into the murderous attack.
Right.
It's the thing is, he goes so far that it's hard to take the circus seriously then, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
He makes it such a circus.
Right.
So that happened. So today Anand has written a piece where he's kind of taken the Ramchandra Guha, pulling his column out of HT and Arnab and said that, this cult of celebrity victimhood is not convincing, at least for Anand. So that's his piece, his view on that. I disagree with his view in the sense that he has said that the questioning of Arnab is a part of a process. I think that's complete bullying. I think that's complete misuse of the state and the arms of the state, like the police. I believe that was just to kind of intimidate him, and I think it has served its purpose. I don't think it will stop. So yeah, that is my position. And for the rest of us, what it means is that, if you have a big daddy backing you, you can pick a fight. If you don't, all bets are off. And let's also be clear that it is not just a journalist versus the state. It is a journalist who, if you want to call Arnab a journalist, I don't. I think he's a buffoon who performs a circus. But this is a buffoon propped up by the state, which is the nation state, the central government, that has his back. That who is being bullied by the state, as in the state of Maharashtra's arm, and they are trying to do what they can to intimidate him. But there are many journalists who don't have either of them backing the other. Like there were people in the UPA time who knew that the state had their back. They could pick pangas because the central government, they knew Sonia Manmohan government, as long as they were around, they may get pushed around a little bit, but they wouldn't get thrown in the clangor. They wouldn't have like TADA or, the kind of sedition laws that are being, that wouldn't happen. They may get questioned, they may get dhamkod.
Right.
So this is a classic case of a journalist who is in an alliance with a very powerful party, taking on another who is using him. But the only thing is that I think what journalists forget on both sides, that you are dispensable, man. If push comes to shove, BJP is be happy to drop you. And you're fucking on your own.
Right.
If there's something I've learned in the last 25 years, don't khud ko too much because XYZ has your back. If you can handle it, and by that I mean a political party, because you are inconsequential to them.
Right. Interesting. Okay. But, you know, what was extremely funny, and I think I thought if we had this conversation, you would probably have to mince your words because you know this is domain specific. This is your area, and I would be more outright in criticizing whoever I want to because I really have nothing to do. But it turns out that I have a softer critique of Arnab than probably you do. I personally feel betrayed by what Arnab did. And I think if you went over my episode with Dhruv, I mentioned it there. I remember when he was a very influential journalist who I really admired. He was pulling people to, he was taking them to task early on. This is 2004, 2005, when I was a young kid. And then suddenly his tone and tenor changed in a fashion that was, it was almost as if he awakened to the fact that screaming is my USP and I can make a lot of TRP if I scream long enough, hard enough about things that are like, he is clickbait in a person. That's what Arnab is to me now. And I feel kind of betrayed by that because I think there is some amount of social responsibility. Apart from the personal economic responsibility that journalists have to sustain themselves, there's a social responsibility they have to the people who watch them. And him on that front has sort of failed me. But what was extremely interesting was a picture that I saw on Twitter or something where Arnab was talking about the entire incident to Republic TV. And it was almost like Karthik calling Karthik, but in real life. Like, what are you doing? Why are there, first of all, 2 mics from Republic TV? What is the lead anchor of Republic TV doing talking to Republic TV? Just, you know, nobody else was there. And that probably ascribes to the circus explanation that you give to the entire phenomena. But what has all of this got to do with him resigning from the Editors Guild and then them supporting it? Like, what is happening there?
Well, the Editors Guild is a body that he feels is... See, you have to understand, Arnab is a phenomenally successful media personality who does something between news and a reality show. I mean, it's somewhere in that spectrum. But for technical reasons of how he has defined his channel, he is a part of the journalist community and a part of the Editors Guild. Now, the Editors Guild, I mean, we could have another podcast and talk long and hard about, has it lived up to its responsibility? Is it the kind of organization that has always covered itself in glory? I mean, I don't think it is as bad as many make it out to be. At the same time, I don't think it is as effective, but that is not unique to the Editors Guild. It is as effective or ineffective as any other body in India. Whether it is CII or FICCI or X or Y or Z. The Editors Guild's prime responsibility is to stand up for journalism and the freedom of the press. Arnab is very far from that. He has advocated shutting down channels. He has advocated banning channels. So he's a jackass who says how high when the BJP says jump. Now, in that, he's obviously a misfit in the Editors Guild. He didn't attend a single meeting. He's not been part of any deliberations, any sort of ideation. This is what we should do. For him, they are pseudo-liberal or whatever the hell they are, because the relationship between journalism and the government or power or establishment or industry will generally be adversarial. It will not be one of alignment.
It should not be one of alignment.
That is the general rule of thumb. In the circumstances where Arnab's relevance, power, financial might all come because of his allegiance or subservience to the central government, he's the antithesis of what should be in the Editors Guild. So for him to storm off and say, I resign live on air, we carried a piece on that. I think Ayush had done that. Newslaundry did that. That dude, it is like an intern saying, I resign and walking out of the office. Go, man, you were never here. You're like irrelevant.
Right.
That was the equivalence. But he made the most of it because he said, देखो मैंने इसलिए किया क्योंकि उन्होंने पालघर पर कमेंट नहीं किया. ना पता नहीं पालघर पर जहाँ भी कमेंट नहीं किया, उन्होंने वहाँ हर चीज पे कमेंट करना है, क्यों करना है, नहीं करना, मुझे नहीं पता. So that was the spectacle. I don't think this had anything to do with that. But his expectation was that now Where is the pseudo lobby? Whatever, he must have run some stupid hashtag. I don't watch his television, his channel anymore. Well, I mean, I think the Editors Guild did issue a statement that bad journalism is not to be punished with violence or something like that.
Right.
So they called out his journalism. At the same time, they backed him like naam ke vaste.
Right.
I think when you make such a circus of it, people are not sure whether to speak up for you. I'll tell you why. Because there may be because, like, for example, his journalists, his reporters, when they go interview someone, I've seen this, I mentioned this on Hafta. I forgot who exactly it was, but it was a Republic reporter who, when Manishankar Iyer was walking out, and I am no Manishankar Iyer fan, I've fought with him on air also. He and I were on a panel and it was extremely
I've got to watch it now. I've got to watch it now.
So yeah, he was like, these sadak chhap people, gutter snipes.
Hey, you hung up.
I mean, I've spoken to him, I've talked to him. Manishankar Iyer is not a man in his. He's not okay.
Right.
Dude.
Right.
I mean, he's old, he's stressed, whatever. He's not in the prime of his youth or cognitive abilities. So this guy's getting in his way and putting his mic. So Manishankar Iyer shoved his mic. Oh my God, look how he's attacked me. Look how he's... Now, dude, you know, I'd be the first one to stand up for someone who was... But you can't stand in front of a guy, push your mic like this, purposely try to stuff it here. And when he does this, say, oh, I've been attacked. You know what I'm saying?
Right, right. You cannot stand in the way of harm and then claim that you're a victim.
Yeah, so, you know, and so it becomes one of those zones where, you know, instinctively you want to stand up for the press.
Right.
But before you can even stand up, that guy saying, where are you? Look, oh, hi, tauba. Then you're about to stop, you saying, oh shit.
Right.
Murderous attack. Kya ink peki? Oh my God, did it? Kya hua? For 5 minutes, they were banging. You had 2 security guards at the back in a car, 2 guys on a bike. Took 5 minutes trying to get you to pull your window down so that you could throw ink on you.
Right.
Such incompetence, you should keep them in Republic as a bloody reporter, man. Now, when that happens, then you do this video, then you do Haitam. Then, even if I want to stand and say, you know, Arnab, then you're like, dude, what am I saying the circus is okay? Am I saying, if you were to just shut up, I'm sure more people would have stuck their neck out.
Right, right. Absolutely, absolutely. And you know what I really like about talking to you is that you don't hold back on your personal opinion when it comes to opinionating. So it's more real that way. And I think you were right. It's that I had tweeted something similarly. I was like, you know, having solidarity, showing solidarity for Arnab is fine, but calling him a real journalist regardless is not, right? Like, let's not confuse giving sympathy to a man who was attacked for being a good servant to the people that he, you know, is. But I wonder how that looks in light of the Kunal Kamra Arnab Goswami flight incident. Like, you know, I mean, of course, Kunal was not trying to be violent as such, not physically at least, right? But I'm just curious, like, is freedom of speech not applicable in the same sense to Kunal Kamra? Or like, how do they conjugate together, those two events?
So I've written a piece on the Kunal Kamra case because a lot of people in the liberal space said that, you know, what Kunal did was wrong. And so I wrote a piece saying, no, what Kunal did was take an opportunity to question the establishment, and Arnab is the establishment. Arnab has not faced his peers on any platform ever since he became a primetime personality. And I will tell you why. Because his pants would be completely nichodoed and he would be shown for what he is. There is this one video where he's claiming that in 2002 Gujarat I was stopped by rioters, which actually happened with Rajdeep. Have you seen that video? Which someone was taking a speech. He made up the story, which actually Rajdeep was the guy who was reporting that. He made it up that it was him. His car was stopped and he was asked. This is because he became, you know, before he became a complete sidekick of the BJP. Check it out. It's online.
Interesting.
He will take interviews from 2 students from some university in Assam, who in any case are overawed by him. We have called him for the media rumble many times. He will never come. He will never take. In fact, me and Madhu once were sitting at Smokehouse and we saw him and we ambushed him with the camera. Arnab, tell us. Oh no, Madhu. In fact, that video we carried also on clothesline and bloody my mic failed. Can you imagine what a tougher I am? So I got the video. I don't know audio, but he's already. Oh no, Madhu. No, you have to tell us.
Right.
I was at the press club once and one of his reporters was there. I took a mic and said, tell us, what is Arnab like? She ran. I said, you do this to others. Why can't we do this to you?
That is exactly my point.
Okay. So anyway, so I had fun. I also made a point. I wasn't only having fun. I was making a point.
Right.
So now he does not face his peers. He does not face questions on any news platform where his peers can question him. He will take softball interviews like his idols from people who are overawed by him. In such an environment, what Kunal Kamra did is what we have been doing for ages. Dude, when I was in my early 20s, I had gone to interview Sushma Swaraj. I was shoving my mic and all. Of course, I wasn't being obnoxious. If she said I want to talk, I'd back off. But of course, I tried my luck. I tried 3 questions and she didn't want to answer any. She said, this is the only line I want to get. Now go. I said, okay, I'll go. I've interviewed Pranab Mukherjee that way. I mean, now, of course, he's ex-president and all of that. Time he was like he'll be reluctant. He'll give you 2, 3, and then he will go. But you ask. Because this is the establishment. Arnab is establishment. So what Kunal did was not cause any harm. He did not threaten violence. He was way more civil than most journalists are. You may have a problem with the word coward or bastard or I don't know, use some word or fucker or something. Use some four-letter word. Well, if you're that queasy about that, then okay, go back to kindergarten and your preppy suits and your prissy and sing Christmas carols or whatever you guys do.
Right.
But I think so that's what Kunal did, and that was fine. What these guys did was try to throw ink on Arnab's face, and what the police is doing is bullying Arnab, which is also I don't at all endorse that. What the Maharashtra police is doing. So it's a complex thing. So yeah, I think, and that's what's different. Arnab, it's like I remember we really trashed NDTV long ago. They did a sting operation on auto rickshaw drivers overcharging people. I was like, wow, what a sting operation! That auto rickshaw guys are overcharging people. And at that time, I think Kamal Nath was Surface Transport Minister. I said, Kamal Nath pe sting karke dikha do. Auto wale pe dikha rahe ho.
Right.
Today, what is Congress, yaar? What are you going at Sonia answer? Do you have the guts to question the people with power? You don't. I mean, you look at what he thought of Aditya Nath, the Yogi ji, the UP Chief Minister. I think Dhruv Rathee or Kunal Kamra have done a video of him talking about Aditya Nath before he became the complete outright BJP Chappu to now. So I think that is where it's not just a black and white on and off. You have to get the context of where he operates and why it is problematic and when it is problematic.
So part of the reason why I brought up Arnab, because Arnab is legacy media, right? And Arnab is one of the more active members, active influencing agents in the legacy media domain as of now, even now. However, I think what happened post 2014 is a lot of our politics and a lot of our journalism went online. And there were a few very interesting, at least right now, very interesting online journalist phenomena that I want to get to. And the reason why I thought it'd be interesting to ask you is because you existed in this gray zone between legacy and alternative for a while, with Newslaundry being a one-of-a-kind, having customers pay you so that there is no ads and then there is no leverage and whatnot. You probably do understand this. But I want to ask about Anand Ranganathan, right? And because he's acquired, I'd never heard of Mr. Ranganathan up until very recently, but he is extremely famous in the right-wing circles. And I want to know what is really happening there. Like, I've heard he used to work for Newslaundry back in the day, right?
Well, he didn't work for Newslaundry. He used to write columns for us. He appeared regularly in Hafta, and because of his association with us and his engagement on Haftas, he was also made consulting editor. He was a good friend. So I won't talk too much about Anand for personal reasons. We
Right.
have common friends, and it would just be.
Mhm.
I mean, I went at him on Twitter because he provoked with attacking Newslaundry and some of my colleagues.
Mhm.
So then I let him have it. But I'm not going to speak about him unless provoked by
I see.
him.
Mhm. Mhm.
And only if provoked by him.
Right.
Otherwise, all I have to say is I think he's a very smart guy. He's
Hmm.
extremely intelligent. He was a wonderful person. I really liked him. I didn't agree with a lot of things he said. I saw slivers of an aggression which was very rare. Now I see it very regularly, and I could never have imagined he would ever talk like that, like he does now. So I don't know why that has happened. I mean, it could be because one gets fame or whatever, but yeah. So I forget Anand. I used to have regular panel with Khamba and a lot of these stand-up comics.
Right.
You know, because I saw Khamba perform. I think he was 22 or 23 at South X back in the day in 2010, 11 or something. And he had phenomenal political commentary for someone that young. So I remember when we started Newslaundry, I said we should have a political discussion with people like Khamba, people like Anuvab. Later, of course. So I mean, we wanted fresh voices, yeah. And some of these voices have, you know, become whatever they have become.
Right.
But Anand has been a friend. I wouldn't call him a friend anymore. But because he's been a friend, I would
refrain. I totally understand. So let me approach the same paradigm from a different lens, right? It's interesting that you bring up comics. I think the farthest pushers of culture in India right now is the comic landscape, is the comedians. I don't know if you're aware of the chess streams that a few comics have been doing and how that's gotten encouragement from, I think, Modi's own Twitter handle. But apart from that, it's raised a lot of money for coronavirus relief, and streaming is a concept that comics are bringing to the table. And it's not just streaming, but political social commentary. I think Kunal does a fantastic job with whatever side he aligns with. He does a fantastic job at picking apart arguments and making his point. But there is also these new age agencies, very much like Scoopwhoop, for instance, right, who do some type of journalism. It might not be the most rigorous, serious journalism that Newslaundry undertakes, but they have a take on almost everything. And in particular, there is Samdish, and Samdish is a phenomenal guy. Samdish is the kind of an interviewer I haven't seen in a very, very long time. Like he's phenomenal. And I wonder what that kind of non-traditional alternative media has in store in terms of influencing the people and the political rhetoric and the political discourse of our futures. What do you think about that?
So have you seen Hasmukh?
I haven't yet.
In that, Ranveer Shori has this dialogue, Jimmy the Maker. So I want to put that dialogue of Nikku the Maker. So I actually found Samdish. He was a very, very enthusiastic photographer, and he came to Newslaundry for an internship. And then he stayed on as a reporter. And then when Scoopwhoop tied up with us to do their series called Chase, so that time it was done in a partnership, and it was my responsibility to put the team together. So Samdish has worked with me for about a year and a half or two. And then, you know, all of them moved to Scoopwhoop. I think he's a phenomenal guy. He's extremely smart, extremely bright. He has great timing. And he's very young. So, you know, whatever rough edges there are, there's a bit of, you know, what you're saying, the rigor is not there. But I think that is, at this stage, it's fine. I think what he is doing at this stage is way beyond what many people even do when they are a decade and a half into. So for the stage he is doing what he's doing, I think it's amazing. Now where that stands in the future, I don't know. You know, new formats are emerging. Maybe it's a late night format where, you know, I remember people like Jimmy Fallon, is that the name? He was accused of normalizing Trump and making him into a sweet guy where he said, touch my hair or whatever. No, I mean, I'm not a Jimmy Fallon fan. I think his comedy sucks. I think Jay Leno's comedy sucks. I like Jon Stewart. I like Bill Maher a lot.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Because it's very political. Jimmy Fallon and Jay Leno are more about making
Kapil
fun of.
Sharma like.
Yeah, it was Kapil Sharma. Right.
Right.
So, so he was criticized for, being too soft on Trump or normalizing Trump. I don't think it was his job. I mean, he does a late night comedy show. I mean, and it's not even that political. Like the Colbert Report is very political, or the late the Jon Stewart show is very political,
right?
Or the Bill Maher show is very political, real time. But the ones that aren't, and if you're getting Trump, then you're getting Trump, and you do a softball interview because that is what you do with everybody. It's not like you're doing it only for Trump.
Right.
It's not like when
a Hollywood actress comes, you don't ask her about her plastic surgeries either.
Did you speak up during Me Too or what?
Right.
You will do a couple. You may try to squeak in a question about it. So now, depending on what format one wants to follow, I think I don't think you can be held up to the standards of journalism. But I'm not sure what my position on this whole thing is. I think as time goes by, it'll be more clear.
Mm-hmm.
Because there is something to be said about normalizing bigotry. Because while journalism is a storytelling craft of a certain format in a particular context, basic human values are not. They are universal. May not be across time, but at least within a country, values are universal. I mean, by and large, I can say in India that we should not beat up women and lock them in the house is a universal value, which one should
ascribe towards.
That may not be the case in Saudi Arabia, for example. There, the value will say that. So, when you have a softball interview with someone who is very problematic, then are you crossing the line into normalizing bigotry? But then if that's the case, is every film journalist guilty of normalizing Salman Khan's abhorrent behavior? Is every film journalist guilty of normalizing Sanjay Dutt's abhorrent behavior? So, you see, then we are getting into a zone where I may not have a very clear position right now. Because Chitransh, my colleague, wrote a piece on Newslaundry, which I did not necessarily agree with, criticizing Samdish's interview with Manoj Tiwari. I mean, I was thinking, my colleagues are free to write opinion pieces on Newslaundry. I don't have to agree with those. And I mean, you could say that I'm a little disagree with that because I'm very fond of Samdish. I have worked with him. I think he's a talent that is rare.
Absolutely.
But was that normalizing someone who has uttered bigotry? I don't know.
Here's what I'll say. There is no way in hell you can watch that interview and not come out having a soft spot for Manoj Tiwari. I think Samdish has, and it's not really like Samdish crafted the interview into showing Manoj in a different light. I think Manoj Tiwari, some part of Manoj Tiwari, is actually that person that Samdish brought out that no media journalist has possibly done before, right? Manoj Tiwari might be a softie at heart. It might not be deniable. He might be mistaken in his ideas and his ideologies and his political alignment. That's for other people to guess. That's something. But what Samdish did was bring out the human part of him, not the political part of him. And it was dressed, that interview was dressed as the BJP chief of Delhi. So the dressing of the recipe was very political, even though the substance was very human. And I think to that extent, if somebody wants to be critical of Samdish, they can go ahead and you can make a fair argument for that. But I definitely think what Samdish represents is a different kind of a demand that his viewers have from the people he interviews. And that demand is no longer, hey, listen, give me all the serious cognitively loading stuff. It's really, who are you as a person? Can I trust you or not? And that is sort of the endeavor that he seeks to embark on. And my guess is that first of all, it's extremely rare. Like even for the United States, I've barely met somebody like Samdish. Like the closest I'd say is what's
Sasha
his name?
Baron Cohen.
Or Between Two Ferns with Zach Galifianakis, right? But they
Yeah.
are absolutely comedy shows. They're not like you're trying to get to know Matthew McConaughey. It's just like we're going to make fun of, right? So, and Sasha Baron Cohen for sure. Like, Who is America? Phenomenal. Nothing like it. But so I think Samdish is bringing the human back in interviews, in people, in a very millennial fashion, and I'm interested as to see where that goes. I um I have another question to ask you. This entire IT cell wala phenomena, which is I'm pretty sure is newer in comparison to the extent of time relative to the extent of time you've been in these journalism circles. What do you have to say about the IT cell wala? This is IT cell se hai. This is IT cell. This is IT cell. It's extremely confusing. I don't know where these IT cells are. What is happening there?
So most political parties who have significant online presence have people who are card-carrying members of the party, who are active on social media, pushing out a particular narrative or whatever the line may be on whatever issue there is. And then there are people who are not outright card-carrying members, but are aligned with the party, but not casually aligned, in the sense that, you may have a view on whatever politician, I may have a view that I, tweet out, or someone else may have a view. They are part of the structure of taking that narrative when it's sent, that now everyone tweets this, everyone tweets that. And there are also people who are not politically aligned outrightly to the public, but actually have a commercial model in place. They could be endorsing a political party, they could be endorsing a brand, but they have a clear menu. So, and then there are others who may not be paid, but are wooed by political parties. And I know several of them. I mean, I don't want to take names on these ones specifically, because they're friends of mine. They weren't interested, but they went and met whoever had called them. And so political parties, and all of them do that, will reach out to, Twitter celebrities or Insta celebrities and say, what do you guys think? We've been reading your tweets. It seems we guys have the same value system. Why don't you kind of become a part of this WhatsApp group and you will be told what to do? And so some choose to do that just because they have access. I guess some get paid. I don't know. But
right.
Yeah, I mean,
so this is not mythology. This is not mythology. This is happening. This is happening, and this is part of the reason why the online ecosphere, as far as facts and stories go, is so confusing, is because there has been acquisition of these independent agents who have been integrated into a broader framework of narratives, and then they become peddlers of stories.
Yes.
You know what my confusion with that is? That once that starts happening at a mass scale, I can trust neither. I can trust first of all, there is never two sides. There is always more than two sides, but let's just simplify it by saying there's two sides. If there is an active concerted effort to, convince people of something using the means of social media, I become so, there is no way I can trust anybody. Like, there is only a handful of people I can trust without a doubt. And that happens because of logistical reasons. So for instance, I know Abhinandan's Newslaundry is not paid by anybody but people like me who are watching. Then I can be like, I have a certain amount of trust. I have a certain amount of faith. He's not bought. But almost everybody else that I see on Twitter, I can have no faith. What if they're part of some kind of an IT league? And my question is this the most confusing journalism and storytelling, and I mean, serious storytelling, has been in your view? Have you seen a more confusing time in your journalism career, or like a worse time in any sense? Is this the darkest we've seen?
No, I'd say this is the brightest I've seen. And why I say that is, confusion may not be a bad thing when you come from a place of complete propaganda. So you see, I have been privileged enough to have seen Doordarshan as the only voice of electronic media and newspapers as journalism and magazines. Not to say that there was no good journalism back then, but you didn't have scams breaking a dime a dozen back then. Why?
Right.
It
There was more
wasn't that-
control.
It's not like there were no scams happening back then. From the Pandit Nehru's cabinet's Jeep scam to downwards, I'm sure there were many more. I know there were many more. Then we moved to a place where television channels came in, media got a little more independent, but there was still some sort of compromise. So it was a little more clear. There was a little more confusion. Now there is too much confusion. Now it seems like chaos, and that is a bad thing. But it is not a worse thing than having only Doordarshan. I've seen that. I've seen the age of only Doordarshan. Today's confused social media age is better than on Doordarshan seeing Mrs. Gandhi's body lying in state, Shastriya Sangeet playing in the background, and those of us who were not in Delhi sitting and thinking, oh, what a beautiful end. Everything is beautiful in Delhi. People are lining up outside. No one knowing that what's happening.
Right.
That was not a confusing time for us. It was a very certain time. Everything is well. All is well. All is
Right. The ability to be confused in that sense is a privilege, because
so it's good to be confused. I think pick who you want to believe. The only thing is that sometimes I forget I'm a news professional whose head is dhassoed into the news world. So when I'm talking to some friends of mine and they will quote some article from, I mean, I don't want to get into a name calling thing here, not with that I haven't called them out. But the news portals and stuff, which are like tucha shit. They're not even like, they don't even do journalism. I'm like, you read that? And these are rational, reasonable people. They say, why? What's wrong with it? Is there something wrong? And then I realized, I do this for a living, so I know. Someone who just reads the news and just got this doesn't know.
Right.
So that way it's dangerous. But net, I think more good will emerge from this than bad.
Right. And you've been on record saying that on this podcast itself, in the first conversation we did, like something very, very similar to this. I'm more curious as to...
Okay, sorry, Prakhar.
Right,
I just want to get a drink of water. And
yeah, please. Yeah. We're close to winding up. Yes. Please go ahead.
Yeah.
So you did mention something very similar in the first podcast that we did too, right? The fact that because you're glued to this network, you understand the intricacies of who you can believe, who you cannot believe, what you can believe, what you cannot believe. And I'm curious if there is a way to make this meta resource, this meta journalistic resource, who can I trust, who can I not trust kind of a thing, public. Is there any way in which we can create some sort of a system where I can go back and be like, oh, yaar, theek hai, I cannot trust this guy, I can trust this guy, I can trust this, and I cannot trust this. Is there any, like, can we start? And this is hypothetical, like I'm not asking you to start something, but is there something we can start that makes credibility its currency?
Prakhar, this is actually a challenge that even very big platforms like Facebook and Google are
trying to face. Yeah.
I have been part of conferences and roundtable discussions hosted by the biggest corporations in the world on this. I have been a part of a group of some 25, 30 media professionals, many of them far more accomplished than me, far more experienced. Some very good ideas have emerged from that. In fact, there was one that came up that there should be a cutoff, like in the stock market, when news starts getting shared, when it goes super viral. So all the social media companies should have some sort of a
circuit breaker,
right? And then something is spiking, that circuit breaker identifies what piece of news that is. You have a fact check team that identifies. And if 3, such false bits come from one platform or group,
they're out.
All social media put like a red mark against them or something, This was one idea that emerged from one of those meetings. But see, eventually, I don't know whether you're saying this because it's a podcast and I'm here with you and you're a polite, wonderful young man, but
none of that is true.
like to say, okay, since you're telling me, but why should you believe me?
Right.
there may be someone else saying, "Sala, ये तो लिब्रांडू है, ये तो बोलेगा ही कि अर्नब फेक न्यूज है, ये तो बोलेगा ही कि ओप इंडिया फेक न्यूज है. Why should they believe me?" So you see, eventually we can try tech solutions, we can try editorial filter solutions, but the ultimate solution will come from what is the capital that society gives to the virtue of truthfulness. And while Mr. Agnihotri made facts are not facts famous, what facts I want to believe at what time, could be driven by many circumstances and contexts. So I think right now we are at a phase where a lot of people are feeling very victimized. They're feeling that, that we have had a, rough end of the stake. It is catharsis, it is revenge. But until we have a leader, and I think eventually the change will come when there is some premium associated with truthfulness, like Bapu had. Right now, anywhere in the world, there is no premium associated with truthfulness.
In fact, it is with disinformation, theatrics, right?
Not that. Mr. Trump has been proved to be talking bullshit several times.
Right.
I can say the same thing about some luminaries in our country, but then people who are watching this with an open mind would get put off. So let me take Trump.
Right.
What he said about injecting disinfectant or putting lights up your ass or whatever the fuck he said. Then he had tweeted on black violence. He still hadn't taken that tweet down last I checked. So people know he's lying.
Right.
He said I was being sarcastic. He wasn't. He said I was talking to reporters. He wasn't. There is video evidence to show. But he still has a support. He said, I could shoot someone on 5th Avenue and my base wouldn't desert me. So our home minister can say something in the floor of the House in Parliament which is untrue, but no one will call him out. So we are living in an age where there is no premium associated with accuracy or truthfulness. When or why will society give premium to that virtue? It could be because we need a Sachin Tendulkar equivalent of truth teller. Or do we need a purge to happen where untruths and disinformation cause something like was caused in Nazi Germany? For us to say, oh shit, man, we don't want to do that again. Germany is very careful about what they do. Every institution of theirs is just so careful about who they associate with, what they say, what you're allowed to say. Or Rwanda, where you cannot even ask someone are you Hutu or Tutsi? Because when you've been through something that horrible, then you say, dude, I don't want to go there again. So what will be the trigger for our society to put a value and premium and truthfulness? Maybe the time when there will be a premium on good journalism.
Right.
And this is what we have.
There is a podcast link that I'll send you, and I definitely suggest you listen to that podcast. I don't know if you've heard of certain Mr. Eric Weinstein. Have you heard of him? Very Twitter famous. He became quite a sensation when Jordan Peterson became quite a sensation back in the day. So, and I think he's at least probably one of the smartest people I've ever heard socially commentate. And I think if you like Bill Maher, you will really like his commentary on Trump and media systems and whatnot. Oh, absolutely. Also, I remember when I was about to interview Mr. Agnihotri, I was explaining to one of my American friends who he was. And I was like, think of him as Ben Shapiro for India. And when you mentioned facts are not facts, I was like, okay, that's along the same bloody lines. But that's just interesting. And to close the loop on as to why I would say I trust you is, I mean, I have no personal reason, right? We've only hung out twice. We've only spoken twice. So there is no particular reason. But what I do trust is, one, your model. And two, the implications of your model, that you could have probably, that Abhinandan, even if I do not know him, is a man who could have made so much more, let's say, material gain if he went down the road, with guns blazing. He was like, you know what, I'll just do whatever. But because you chose a more transparent, more accountable path, it makes me trust you a little more. So to that extent, I have faith in Newslaundry. To that extent, I can listen to Newslaundry and then hedge against whatever else I need to hedge against. Now, I have one last question, and then I'll let you be. And that question is, because we haven't really talked about coronavirus at all in this hour-long conversation, right? I want to ask, what is the future of coronavirus for India? Like, what's happening on the ground? What's good? What's bad? Where do we go from here?
Yeah, this is an emerging conversation, and I read more and more about it every day. What will the post-corona world look like? What will the new models of existing businesses be? What will work from home be like as a regular convention in our lives? As far as India is concerned, I will say that there's been a lot of screw ups as far as, labor not being fed. And I'm aware of all those problems and I have been critical of them. I have called them out. But what we are facing is an event that is so huge that we often forget how huge it is because we're in it.
Mm-hmm.
And no matter how, vain we are, I think deep down, none of us had actually thought that we will be a part of something so huge.
Right.
In the evolutionary scheme of things.
Hmm.
So I think it's important to keep putting in context what a big thing this is. And keeping that in mind, I think in India, most people involved, net, have done a decent job. State governments, central governments, and I'm not saying they've done an obvious criticism can be, I can say that because I have a fridge full of food, I have a air-conditioned home, I have a car, if I were a stuck laborer on the ground, I would not think the same, and probably I wouldn't. But governance is triage. And I think of what could have gone wrong in a country like India is insane. I still don't believe the numbers. And I think that's because we just haven't tested enough. I think we have about 18% of the world population and maybe 2% of the cases.
Testing, right. Oh, the cases. Mm-hmm.
So I actually checked with some reporter friends that are people dying and we don't even know. So apparently it's not that there's a spurt in cremations or in Qabristans. We checked, at least in Delhi.
Because deaths don't lie.
People are dying and they are not being reported.
Right.
But they will have to be buried or cremated somewhere, na? There's no spike in those numbers.
Right.
At least in the 2 metros where I had requested someone to check.
Right.
So I would say we are still in the process, but we could have dodged a bullet. But now cases are emerging in the crowded bastis of Delhi. Will it spread like a Dharavi or I don't know. I just heard the BBC podcast yesterday and it said that, I forget the name of the agency that they quoted, but it's a fairly credible agency. The BBC is quoting, and I still think the BBC is fairly credible. They said by the time we have contained it, 1 billion people may have been infected worldwide. We are still at 3 million.
So that's a lot. We've saved a lot.
So that means if that projection is to be believed, we are still looking at 997 million more people being infected.
Right.
Not dying, but being infected.
Right.
So, I mean, I don't know. But economically, I think, man, we're screwed. We are so badly. I think that is something, and I've appeared twice on Times now, and I told Rahul, I said, dude, we should discuss solutions. Rajiv Pratap Rudy will come and say, Modi jai ki jai ho, or Rahul Baba gade hain. Right. And some other guy will say, Modi ji itne achhe hain, or Rahul Baba itne achhe hain. Or I'm like, why don't you get a panel and forget getting me? Get people to come with solutions. I the only payload I hear. Right. Like I've read about the paycheck protection program in the US. The first outlay of $350 billion. Then another outlay. Now I've seen the criticisms of it. And I've also seen what economists say, that NPR carried a podcast where the economists they spoke to said that the speed was more important than accuracy. Even if out of the 350 billion, a few dozen billion went to non-deserving people, it's okay, because restarting the economy is going to be a lot tougher if those businesses fold up. Right. So I think America, because it is so invested in its economic might and its economic prospects, is discussing this, not always in very pleasant terms where they are talking lives versus economy, which I don't think is a nice way to frame this. Right. My fear is India is not discussing that aspect, and it could turn very ugly. In fact, I was seeing today, CNN this evening, live images from Lebanon, where rioting has started, looting has started because of the economic situation, because of corona.
Right. Right. And I agree. It's like every time I speak to somebody in India and I'm like, so do you think 3rd May you guys are going to open up? And they're like, nahi, nahi, yaar, abhi to, like, it's sort of like, it's so unbelievable. While in America, there's protests already. These guys are like, listen, we cannot stay in here any longer. If we don't go back to our jobs, we're going to die anyway. And what that is an indication, because I don't know if option A or option B is right, open up or don't open up, is still up for debates. And I'll let the people who have the data do the thinking. But it goes on to say how newsrooms, where usually information dissemination happens, becomes like self-masturbatory, like just like, okay, yes, everybody is great and everything that's happening is great or everything. There's no getting to the substance in probably these newsrooms. So I think that is all I have. I think that's most of the questions that I have. Do you have a question for me?
Well, no, I don't right now, and my brain is too fried. It's
I'm sure
night, and I need to
Right.
sleep. But yeah, I do. I'll let you know if I have questions.
Please,
But
absolutely do.
do take care of yourself out there
will.
by yourself, young man in New York.
I
It would
will.
be scary if I were your age, stuck in a country that I'm not familiar with.
I got an Xbox, so now I'm fine. All right. It's been very fun.
Man.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh no, I will absolutely will. And if I'm in India and circumstance permits, I'll come say hi.
Yes, and hopefully, I mean, we've had a conference in partnership with Facebook and ORF last year at Columbia University. We wanted one this year, and I was hoping you'd be part of our nice team.
Right.
But now, I guess no conference is happening this year.
Right. Right. I can totally imagine, because we're not sure if school's reopening offline next semester either. So we're not sure.
No, dude, even if stuff reopens, I'm not taking the risk of flying 40 people. I mean,
sure.
No, yeah,
but do you guys plan on doing this like the following semester then?
For sure. Forget the following semester. We plan to do it as soon as
you can
out in the market.
Okay. Sounds good.
It doesn't matter what the date is, all the stuff, because we were supposed to have 3 conferences this year. All 3 are out. So as soon as it lifts, we're just going to action all 3.
Okay. Okay. It's been fun talking to you. Please take
good
care of yourself.
Take care. Bye.
ठीक है